Welcome, Autoimmune warriors and friends. We're leveling up our game this season with an Invisible Strength series. So much of the battle happens behind the scenes, especially when we're chasing dreams like earning degrees, crushing it in sports, or building careers. We're going to pull back the curtain on the real fight against autoimmune disease. We're highlighting student athletes and other warriors making moves towards their dreams while navigating the ups and downs. Think resilience, perseverance, and those quiet moments of self-compassion that fuel us. It's about rewriting the narrative and showing the world what's possible when you embrace your invisible strength. I'm the founder of Invigorate, Karin Wagner, and I'm joined by my amazing co-host, Chris Burton. Thank you so much for being here.
Always a joy to be here with you, Karin, and hoping all is well with you and yours.
Absolutely. We say invisible strength. How do you think about that, or what does that mean to you in terms of autoimmune disease and navigating day-to-day life?
I love this whole image of invisible strength. For me, it makes me picture a beautiful swan on a lake, just gracefully making its way across that lake. But what people cannot see is how ferocious underneath those waters that swan is kicking and kicking and kicking. And I think that's very similar to our journey as folks who live with autoimmune diseases and disorders, is that, people will see you and say, oh, you look great, but they don't necessarily know the fight you had to get out of bed. They don't know the ton of appointments you have or the ton of medicine you might be on or all the different challenges you have on a day-to-day basis. So I do think invisible strength is really, really applicable and just really is comprehensive with regard to exactly what we go through.
So much of it is under the water, paddling, or behind the scenes. Part of this invisible resilience is not only that work ethic and working through these ups and downs, but also giving ourselves grace and self-compassion to take care of ourselves in a way that sometimes require more strength than pushing through.
That's really true. Because I think the kind of strength you're describing, Karin, is really the sort of security, because so much of what this journey does to us is bring up these feelings of grief and loss and remembering what you once were able to do, whether it was working full time or working out full strength or whatever the case may be, playing with your kids or playing with your younger brothers and sisters. I think that having the strength to say what I can do now is, still okay. And what I can do now with the wisdom to say, I don't need to work myself to death. I don't need to wear myself out so that tomorrow I'm miserable in order to prove something. It makes a tremendous difference in terms of understanding what makes us us and understanding where our worth is. It's this wisdom to restrain ourselves rather than to push ourselves far beyond our limits.
I love that, is especially for me, and I know other people I've talked with in the community, is a tendency to value our self-worth based on how much I'm accomplishing. To your point, really finding that value and worth in other aspects of your life.
Right. Because it just costs too much to still, in many ways, it's almost as if we're chasing ghosts, The person that you and I were before our diagnoses, they had problems too, but we hold them up as some sort of paragon for how we were always supposed to be and how we were always meant to be. But what we forsake is all the wisdom we've accumulated through this journey, all the experience, all the, self-discovery that's happened along this journey. If we just throw all of that away in pursuit of this person that no longer exists, that's where the true loss lives, in my opinion.
The power in the unseen. How has your condition influenced your approach to everyday life?
I think I now value efficiency far more than I used to. I bought a planner this year. Like, who is this person? What am I doing? This is a nice shiny yellow one. I wish I had it on hand. I'd flex it. But just this whole sort of thinking about life almost in a way that we think about, producing a show like this with like pre-production. What is my pre-production of the day? I'm not just going to jump into each task and exhaust myself because I haven't come through with the end in mind. I didn't do backward design on my day. Think about really, people throw around the term work-life balance, but I really think about what's the chief end of each day for me. Is it more important for me to have, accomplished some particular goal at the cost of every other aspect of my life? Or is it more important to touch on each aspect of my life? There are going to be days, of course, or you have a deadline of some sort, something that demands more attention than usual, and you need to attend to that. But generally speaking, knowing how to rest well, there's so many days prior to thinking this way that I spent too much time on work and I never really unwound. I didn't give myself a chance to really rest and gather energy for the next day. And so I just went on this downhill spiral of just being more tired than the day before. But there's something that I've learned, and it's taken me years, frankly, to get here, about really pacing it and saying, you know what, this is going to be today's allotment of work. And then we're going to take time to rest and attend to family and friends, and then we'll get back to the allotment of work for the next day. And what's been so fascinating to me is that even though I am working less than I had previously, I'm working better than I ever have before.
I think there's absolutely a shift moving towards focusing on priorities. And maybe that's just because you and I are further along in our self-discovery journey. But that's been a game changer for me as far as making sure that focus on your top priorities and forget about the rest, or maybe it's just not going to get done as well as it could be. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
A follow-up, and I want to ask you, because I know there's been periods in your time where you're in your life where you're working, you're going to school, you have a family and a social life. In the height of the busiest time of your life, how did you prioritize or create efficiencies to make, because sometimes you can't quite give up everything. You feel like you have school, work, all these things.
Right.
How do you do what you're talking about during a time or a period like that?
So I think about all those days where I got up at 4 a.m. and started to do the work that was, for lack of a better term, my antisocial work, right? So if I was writing my dissertation, that's not something I can really write and hang out. But hey, just want to catch up with you as I'm writing this. I can't do that. I don't know who does that, but I can't. So I don't know if there's anyone who's doing that. I would do that sort of work that required the most solitude the earliest in the day, because that way I wouldn't feel what I often feel is a sort of guilt or shame or FOMO, fear of missing out on being in the mix, right? So I had friends who, when I was in college, and I would say to them, aren't you coming down to fraternity row? It's Friday night. And they'd be like, I'm studying tonight. And it's 9 o'clock on a Friday night and they were studying. And they're brilliant people. And I really respect their discipline above all else. But I just wasn't like that. I needed to be in the mix. So I would hang out. And then when everyone was asleep, I was the only one up on campus, I would do my work. But I didn't get a lot of sleep. Thinking about in my adult life now, making sure that I took care of those things and I tried to handle, the squeaky wheel as best as I could during the day, so that above all else, now being a parent, I could be present, right? So maybe they're watching Despicable Me 12 or whatever number the movie's up to now, and I'm just kind of half asleep on the couch, but I'm there, and I think that that's something that's really important. The times where I need to decompress, and now, my sons are in love with sports and they want me to play them in Madden or in 2K or some sort of video game, I'm going to take those 30 minutes and do that, because that's far more important than, me reviewing my day's notes with that time. If I had to choose between those two, even though reviewing the day's notes is something that's essential, I would do that in a time when they're going to sleep or a time where they're occupied with something else, because that time with them, I will never get back.
I found that when we talk a lot about priorities, ideally our priorities align with our values. And when that happens, I've found that it makes it easier to take those 30 minutes to spend with your kids or whatever the more important thing is, versus feeling this guilt of needing to get done whatever I needed to get done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, because you have to, for whatever it is for you, whether, it may be your friends, it may be, elders in your community, whatever it is, you want to join the softball team, you have to have my value is a balanced life. I don't think, if you're spending all your time with the softball team and you never showed up to work, that wouldn't work either, right? But you have to, it wouldn't work. But you have to really pursue the joy in your life. You really have to understand that fulfillment comes through a variety of instruments. It's not just the one thing. If you're just like so career focused that it impedes your relationships, there's a loss there, and a loss that you may not be able to ever fully heal.
Focusing on my career too much earlier on was definitely a pitfall that I would advise other people to watch out for.
For sure.
What is a pitfall that you would advise other people to avoid from your experiences?
I would say the paralysis of analysis is a pitfall I would tell people to be careful of. Sometimes we spend so much time thinking that we're not doing, and we think that the thinking is doing, but it's almost as if life were a streaming service, right? And you're trying to pick a movie to watch or a TV show to watch. It would not make sense to say, hey, Karin, let's see all the options that Netflix has first before we pick something to watch. That doesn't make sense. That's how you're going to spend the whole 3 hours, 2 hours, however long the movie was. Sometimes you have to make a decision. And is there possibly a better movie out there? Absolutely, there was a better choice somewhere, but you have to make a choice, because we cannot just get so stuck in the sensory overload of all the options that we have, particularly living in this information age. We can't just get so stuck on having all these choices that we don't choose anything at all. You have to make a choice. You have to understand that there may have been a better choice, but you made a choice, and it's okay to say, this is what I'm going to do now, because next time I'm going to do that. And the same thing, if you're a creative person, you can't wait until, it's without flaw. Sometimes you have to put that art out, warts and all. We would never have an episode out if every single time we were going to have a conversation, something imperfect got in the way, and now we say, oh, just scrap the whole thing. No, there's ways that you can work through the imperfections. I would dare to say the imperfections is what makes us human. And the perfection that a lot of people are chasing is a futile exploration. So that's just my thinking on it. Paralysis of analysis has held back a lot of great people.
I love that. What a moment, a laughable moment, or something funny that you remember from dealing with lupus or autoimmune disease?
Well, my wife and I say that, and we say it as a point of gratitude and appreciation, that as scary as the 2 flare-ups I've had, the 2 that have put me in the hospital have been, that we remember the hospitalizations with a lot of laughter. That we spent a lot of time. I mean, while we're getting scary news, right? And they're we may need to do this. Every doctor's coming in the morning with a very serious doctor voice, but we're still spending time laughing. I remember one time I had a really hyper vigilant nurse who would run into the room, and it just seemed like a superhero. Their energy was they take my vitals, and it felt everything was an episode of Grey's Anatomy or some sort of medical show. And I was like, what's she so worried about? And I just remember us laughing at that, little things like that. Just the way that people would sort of not know how to deal with it and don't know how to talk to you. We would just kind of, for me, humor helped me to cope. It helped me to sort of, lighten the mood for a lot of people who came into the hospital room with a lot of gravity. And just we're feeling the seriousness of it. To me, I don't think serious situations should prevent us from, still being people. And I think we still need to have joyful moments, especially when things aren't going well. So that's something that sticks out to me when you ask that question.
Was that the same nurse that said you are strong when she gave you the IV?
No, not the same nurse. Shout out to that nurse who told me that I was not a butterfly. They're like, you are strong. That was my first.
She said you weren't a butterfly.
I think so. I'll have to ask my wife after this, because it was something that made us laugh for a year. She was like, you're strong. You're not a butterfly. I was like, what do you have against butterflies?
Yeah, they evolved from caterpillars.
I
They're
was like, yeah,
amazing.
they look pretty resilient to me. You know, they go through a lot. But she was like, you're not weak. You're strong. I was like, I am strong. I appreciate her.
These diseases can bring grave times. You're talking about being in a
Okay.
hospital. I've definitely been hospitalized, but I
Yeah.
think humor is a key piece to be able to get through some of the toughest
Yeah.
moments.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, certain things, as we're recording this, I'm recording from Richmond, Virginia, that's been out of water now for 3 days. And it's really, I will say, satisfyingly humbling because much of our lives we spend with the illusion of control. We think we're in so much control of everything. I decided when we're going to meet, and I'm going to drive over there, and I'm going to pick this from the supermarket, and I'm going to live in this house. And when I go to that house, I'm going to turn that faucet and water's going to come out of it. And all these things depend on so many other things beyond our control, like so many things. And when something that seems normal, something that you take for granted, just goes out of the including our health. Because I don't know about you, but before all this, I never thought about my health. Like I would work out and I played sports and I ate whatever I wanted to eat. And I remember telling my wife when we were newlyweds, I was like, why do I need health insurance? I don't get sick. We could save so much money if I didn't have health insurance. Like just the dumbest thing possible, right? Like it just such a foolish thing to say. Just didn't know that, something that I never had to think about would soon become a central focus in my life. But it allows you, when you've been humbled in that way, have perspective that you otherwise could not have, not even refuse to have, but just couldn't have it because you just didn't know how good you had it.
So easy to take things for granted. And so much
Sure.
gratitude is everywhere. It's a hot topic these days.
Sure, for sure.
But if you're struggling for it, it's easy when something like that comes up. My sister's dryer just went out, so she spent the Saturday at the laundromat, and she's like, I've never been so grateful for just having a washer and dryer.
Telling you, you know? And I don't know if they still have the whole carry a bunch of quarters if it's a card now, how the laundromat is. But
I don't know.
back in the day it was a roll of quarters, but they probably changed it. But I just think about all of these things that are truly luxuries, like absolutely luxuries that because we have an abundance here, have just considered essentials. I can't live without. But there are billions of people on this planet who live without, who would just stand in front of a dryer and not even have clothes in it, just press the button just to see it go because they're just marveling at the technology. There's billions of people like that, and so it tells me that we all need to slow down. It tells me that we all need to just, as you say, let gratitude be trending. Let gratitude be something that really permeates the areas of our lives because there's so much. I know there's a lot of bad things happening, no doubt about it, but there's also so much good happening. I believe more good than bad is happening, even right now. So there's so much to be grateful for,
And with you, many times, I am grateful for getting lupus. Yes, it was tragedy, but it fueled a self-discovery journey in me that I don't know that I would have gone down had I not gotten that diagnosis.
Right. Same. And I'm sure that sounds awful to people, but I can tell you, I just, all we can do is live within the reality that we have. Right. So I can't, you know, dive into the multiverse of who I've become without lupus because I see who I have become with lupus. And I appreciate this person because they're more appreciative than the person who didn't have it. Not saying I was completely unappreciative, but it's deep in my sense of gratitude because I didn't know there'd be a day where breathing would be hard. I didn't know there'd be a day where taking a walk could be difficult. You know what I mean? All the different things that have happened to us throughout the years that prior to it, you would have never given a second thought to it. But now you're like, in the least cliche way possible, grateful for every breath, you know?
Absolutely. It humbles you, like you said.
Humble, no question.
So it can be easy to feel like things are taken from you. You're robbed of not hanging out with your friends or whatever it is.
Right.
It would encourage those moments to really sit and process those feelings, knowing that you will come out the other side a better person for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's something that we're in a cultural moment where discipline is not trending, right? We're saying like, I'm going to do things in a difficult way. I was listening to this brother, I think his name is Myron Golden. He talks about this like principle he has about easy, hard, right? So easy and hard are two sides of a coin. And if I choose the easy way first, that means I have hard later. But if you choose the hard way first, that makes things easier going forward. And I think there's something really beautiful and something to appreciate in that none of us choose any of these illnesses or disorders or diseases that we have. But that sort of hard and having to deal with that hard and that hard becoming a way of life makes other things that would have been hard easier because you have perspective that you did not have prior to, you know?
That, absolutely. We have time. I want to get one last question in because we've been talking about really the tough stuff. Chris, what is something that you've accomplished or achieved that since you've gotten lupus that you didn't think was possible early on in your journey?
Leading a support group. That's the quick answer. Because when I first got diagnosed and someone said, oh, you should need to be in a support group, I went in that group and I was so sad. Shout out to those people. I don't remember them, but like shout out to them. But I just was like, I can't do this because everything that I've been talking about in this episode, the opposite was happening. Like where I needed joy, there was only despair there. And I was like a young person in my 20s. I didn't need to feel like this was a death sentence, even if that were true. And it certainly is not. Like you don't have to, you can live a long, contributive, prosperous life in spite of this thing. And being in spaces where that doesn't seem possible or like where cynicism has the last word, I was so allergic to it. So to go from that to now running or co-leading now a support group and being able to contribute to others' hope, being able to contribute to others, a sense of keep going and persistence and desire to live is such a blessing to me, and something that 13 years ago I thought would have been impossible because I'd be like, I don't want anything to do with that. But now I'm so glad, even when I do assessments of like, all right, I'm doing a lot. Like, what's something that, I could phase out of my life or appreciate as a season, but that season's concluded. I can't shake the support groups because they've been so beneficial to people, but myself included. I really feel blessed being able to help others keep going. And so that's the answer for me, Karin, is support groups.
That sense of community is invaluable when you're going through something as challenging as these conditions sometimes.
No doubt.
But back to your story, it's incredible. And I would encourage anyone early on in their journey to not write anything off because you can't even imagine what could be ahead. It's just not in your vision yet.
Absolutely. That's so true.
So, Chris, in the coming weeks, I'm excited. We'll bring on some guests to talk about their invisible strength stories. And I'm really excited to pull back the curtains and get into the day-to-day realities of what it means to not only navigate these diseases, but go ahead and pursue all of our dreams despite them.
That's right. No, I'm really excited about this. And I know that there are tons of people who we're going to encounter who are going to share incredible stories. So I can't wait for you all to hear all these stories that are going to come through. It's going to be great.
So more to come. In the meantime, thank you, Chris, and thank you for everyone listening. Don't hesitate to reach out or drop us a comment. Until next time, take care.
Take care, y'all.